Hey guys, what's up? James here from Embark, and today I want to talk to you about why the poor stay poor. Okay, so a couple of weeks back I did a video which is why the rich stay rich, and I thought it'd only be fair to look at why the poor stay poor as well. And it's not just sort of opposites as you might think. There's a few other things in there that makes a big difference. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is the poverty trap. So depending on where you're born and how much wealth you have, the poverty trap can get you. So it's a cycle of no or low education. You can't get a decent job, you sort of just survive, you have kids, and then they can't get an education as well. And it's this sort of never-ending cycle. So low wages means lack of ability to pay for education and healthcare. And that then leads to poor health, and that also has an effect on your productivity. So you'll have a low productivity because you have that low education and lack of healthcare. And those low wages also means a lack of ability to save money because you're literally having to live right on that poverty line. You're having to live from whatever money you make. You have to make ends meet from that. So those low wages means a lack of ability to save, then a lack of ability to invest, and therefore low chance of economic growth. And that is why it's called a trap, because once you're in it, it's a real tough cycle to get out of it. And this is kind of a thing that is sort of from less developed countries, less economically developed countries, and from current developing countries. And unfortunately, that's a trap that a lot of the populations get into. And the only way out of it is education, and charities really try and help with the education. But it's a tough one to get out of, and education is the only way to get out of it. Secondly, the debt trap. Another trap that you can fall into. So let's take a look at this one now. So you justify adding more debt, and then you take on more debt. Your extra debt causes stress, and you need to relieve that stress. And therefore you're back to number one of justifying adding more debt. So you can look at it in another way as well, sort of a more practical way. So let's have a look at that now. So you're short of cash at the end of the month, so you use credit. Balances of that credit grows, and there's higher payments, but you're still on the same income. You're still on the same income, but you've got higher payments. So then once you've paid all your bills at the end of the month, you're going to be short of cash. And again, then you have to use credit. Balances grow even more, payments grow even more, higher payments. Again, you're on the same income, you've still got to pay your bills, and at the end of the month, you're low on cash. So again, it's this trap that's really hard to get out of, and it's a trap that the sort of paycheck to paycheck people might potentially get into, and that's a bit of an issue. So realistically, you need those emergency cash funds that we've talked about, that's savings that we've talked about before, because if you have those savings, if something comes up in this trap that you're in, you're not going to fall into it. If you are going paycheck to paycheck, you're not having to take out credit, you've managed to have a little safety net of savings. If something does go wrong, you can use those savings. You don't have to get stuck in that trap. So the trap is avoidable, but a lot of poor people are unfortunately in that debt trap. So lack of free time. This one is a bit of an odd one, but I think it's worth going over. Arguably, some people can pull themselves out of poverty or away from poor areas and to lead a better life if they can create a side hustle or generate some more income through potentially a second job or something like that. They can build up that wealth if they work really hard to then get out of poverty and to better themselves and to increase their financial output. But they need the free time to build up and save in order to hustle, and they need this free time to educate themselves, to then get better paying jobs, or to educate themselves to then go out and start a small business and bootstrap a small business. These things need time. That's why I think lack of free time is a reason to poverty. So my partner actually had a settlement. She had a car crash when she was younger, had a settlement of some money, and she actually used that after university. She used that to then internship in London to pay for travel going there, rent at home, travel going to London, food, things like that. And that gave her the ability to do internships for free, work for free at a few different places, and build up this work experience, build up this knowledge and understanding of different industries. And she's then used that and progressed that on to create her own business, which is our business, Embark. And she's done that from that free time. She's had that free time to be able to go and do those internships and do those things. And she wouldn't have been able to do that if she didn't have the cash reserves. So although it's based in having the money to survive in order to get that free time, it's more about that free time and how you utilize that. And unfortunately, a lack of free time is one of the reasons that the poor stay poor. So another big one is money management. Lots of people are bad with managing money. It's not just poor people. I personally know people with incomes of 60 grand upwards, and they can't save money to save their lives. They just can't do it. They just spend every paycheck as soon as they get it, regardless of how much money is surplus. They just spend it. So it's not just poor people that can't manage money. And we know this instinctively. There's so many celebrities that we've seen that have had massive fortunes, and then they've stopped working for whatever reason. They've retired. They don't do as many acting jobs or whatever it was that they were famous for, and they squander the money. They completely go bankrupt within a few years because their spending is so high and they just don't understand how to manage money at all. So as I said, this isn't specific to poor people. It's more just people that haven't had the opportunity to learn how to manage money, or more to the point, they haven't had a chance to practice how to manage money, whether that be through not having enough money in order to practice managing the money, i.e. poorer people, or through celebrities having a ton of money but never having to deal with it because their accountants or their managers deal with the money, so they don't have to deal with it. So it's not just an educational thing, it can be a practice thing too. But if you're good at managing money, you're going to have obviously more money eventually at some point. And luckily now this education in how to manage your money is free all over the internet. And ideally there'll be a time where everyone is open, honest, and talks about finances in order for everyone to learn better and therefore build their wealth. However, to quote Naval Ravikant, free education is abundant all over the internet. It's the desire to learn that's scarce. The next reason why poor people stay poor is they live above their means. So what is that phrase? What does that mean? So actually it's kind of the same as the debt trap, but you don't start off with a lack of money. So effectively you're not short of cash, you have extra cash. You buy more stuff and you spend out more, so you have higher rent or a bigger house with a bigger mortgage, or you take out a fancier car with a bigger lease, and therefore the balances grow for your monthly outgoings. Higher payments on these things, like higher increase in mortgage, increase in rent, increase in car lease, but you have the same income, or maybe a little bit better because you've had a pay rise, something like that, and then you have to pay the bills, but now you're potentially short of cash, or you're literally break even at the end of the month. And this is otherwise known as keeping up with the Joneses. And you see this all the time, that someone gets a house and their neighbour gets a new car, so they have to get a new car. Their friend talks about going on holiday, so they have to book a holiday. It's that keeping up with the Joneses. It's that front of, this person's doing this and they've got this money to do that, so I'm going to do that too, and tell them about it. It's just people swinging dicks around, basically pretending like they have the ability to do so, but half the time, more than half the time, they don't. They can't afford to do it, and this is where they potentially then get into the debt trap, where they have to borrow money, they have to take credit in order to pay for those bills, and then try and scrimp and save to pay off those debts, which potentially it doesn't happen. And it's been the case where I've known people that have lived above their means, increased all their outgoings, incoming hasn't increased at all really, or negligibly, and they've gone bankrupt effectively. It happens all the time where these people are trying to keep up with everyone else, and it's not going to end well. Either you have to take on a ton of debt and you have the chance potentially to pay it off eventually, or you just have to say, nah, sure, enjoy your holiday. Now, we haven't got a holiday booked this year, we're actually just saving, but it doesn't happen. So the next reason is they don't prioritise, and we touched on this briefly in one of the first reasons, but they don't prioritise savings and or an emergency fund. And this comes back to the poverty trap and lack of education for poorer people, but they don't tend to prioritise savings or saving for a rainy day and getting that emergency fund through either lack of education or just genuinely not having enough money to actually save each month. And then this means that a large percentage of people are on that break-even point every month, living paycheck to paycheck. Big emergency comes in, car breaks down, you need to get it fixed, things like that can literally wipe you out, and you're going to go into that poverty trap and you're going to be stuffed. So it's that sort of living above your means. It leads to the same thing, can lead to the poverty trap. It's not your fault. You just haven't had the ability to save, and unfortunately you're then being pushed into the poverty trap by an emergency. You don't have the savings to cover it, and that happens, unfortunately, and that's one of the reasons that poor people stay poor. And lastly, poor people tend to spend more money on materialistic things and buy more depreciating assets. Rich people seem to not do this. They seem to only ever buy assets that will either appreciate in value or pay out monthly, i.e. buy a property and rent it out. You know, they buy depreciating assets that they can barely afford, instead of buying something appropriate to their level of income. Buying depreciating assets is effectively throwing money away, and it's advised against by every financial institution in the world. Says it's the worst thing to do. Just don't buy a depreciating asset unless you absolutely have to. But there's a ways around that, and you really shouldn't do that if you don't need to. At least buy one appropriate for your level of income. But materialistic things are desirable in our current world of consumerism. And it's up to you to fight against that and say, nah, I'm going to be more frugal. I'm going to save that money instead of buying something that forces me to live above my means. So at the end of the day, that's definitely a choice thing rather than something that is just unfortunate and based on the position you've been born into. So that's it for me, guys. That is the reasons why poor people stay poor. If you enjoyed the video, please like, and if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. We've got new videos coming out every single week. I've been James from Embark, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.